Welcome everybody to the Living Consciously television show coming to you live for our Denver, Colorado studios. We are also streaming live on Google Live as well as Hangouts and on ConsciousEvolutionMedia.com. I'm your host and moderator, Coach Steve Toth, and our theme today is we're going to be having a curious dialogue about neurosciences, Freud, and the Buddha. And our guest today is a fantastic guest of ours who's been on our network before. His name is Harvey Kraft, and he's joining us from California. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate being here.
You're extremely welcome, and we look forward to having this great dialogue. And now let me introduce you to the rest of our cast, beginning with next to Harvey, we have Jamie Lerner. She's joining us from a city where there's lots of wind. That's got to be Chicago, right?
It's Chicago, and it's great to be here.
It's great to have you. And next to her, the woman in the red, she is from a place where the kangaroos are just roaming all over the place. That's going to be Australia, right? Welcome.
I guess it is. Great to be here.
and then next to her, to the right, is Nina de Verderosa, and she's joining us from a place where the lights are always on. That's got to be Las Vegas, right?
Oh, absolutely, and my light is always on.
Okay.
Why not?
That's
Play
good
the
to know.
game.
That's good to know. I'm going to make a note of that. Okay. All right. So we have a very interesting theme, which was, of course, provided by our guest, Harvey Kraft. So somehow, I'm pretty sure that neurosciences, Freud, and Buddha is connected, and I'm sure we're going to find out by the end of the show how they are connected. But to start, it would be a great place to begin, like maybe talk a little bit about what is really consciousness, since this is the Conscious Evolution Media Network. So would you like to kick that off, Harvey?
Talk about consciousness?
Yeah, let's talk about consciousness. Our favorite subject.
Yes, I love talking about consciousness. I would say that it is very difficult for a conscious human being to see themselves as a conscious human being, first of all, because we are conscious of our environment, and we're conscious of our body, and we're conscious of circumstances, but we are really not conscious of ourselves in the hidden part of who we are. Some people call it the unconscious, but consciousness in its full spectrum is like the spectrum of light, where there is a visible light portion, but the entire spectrum of light is much, much greater and has all the different colors of the rainbow in it.
So we're talking about neon. We're talking about neon again.
Well, he doesn't know me. He doesn't know me yet, so he's getting himself well in there, and I'm loving what he's saying. I love the rainbow part because my mother loved rainbows, so I love this rainbow part, which was color. My mother would have loved you, by the way, Harvey.
Thank you so much. I adore your mother too.
She's up there somewhere. She's looking over us.
So.
Yeah.
So the way I am experiencing consciousness is my talent for this is probably very limited, but the way I know my consciousness is that I'm in the present moment. And how do I know that? I know that by noticing that my mind is not chattering, which is not doing that right now, and I'm not bringing anything to this conversation from the past or from the future. Does that qualify as a good definition?
I think it does, but there is a really beautiful way of looking at that present moment, and that is that it's really quite a mystery, along with consciousness. How long is that present moment, Steve? The now. How long does that last? Just for
a moment.
No,
That's all.
Then it's the next one, and the next one, and the next one.
There's a
but
continuation.
any moment can be cut in half into another segment, another segment. So consequently, really, what we call the now is a paradox. It is somewhere between the past and the future. And so the now that we live in is a perfect example of what the Buddha called the middle path. The middle path is a way of thinking to really understand what it means to truly be conscious as being neither this nor that, but both. That's a paradoxical statement, and consciousness is paradoxical. That means that the present moment is neither the past, neither the future, but it contains both. And this is the beauty of the present moment and the mystery of it.
It's very interesting how you describe that. I've never heard it being described that particular way, and I think it's, you know, we always say we're in that present moment, and now I'm thinking I'm halfway there and I'm halfway in between, actually, but I'm still living the present moment.
Always. That's the only place you can live in, and that's what's so magnificent about this. It really gives you an appreciation of the mystery and beauty of life, and how open life is to exploration and understanding it is what really the theme is of today. All of neuroscience and Freud and the psychology that followed and go back in terms of their origin to ancient times when people truly meditated and thought very deeply about these issues and how the human mind works, and on a cosmic scale, on a personal scale, on a collective scale. And I think that that's what the kind of consciousness that we can talk about tonight, if that's the subject.
How can we escape from superfluous things that we think about and we kind of do, but they're only superfluous and mean nothing actually at all to our life or anyone's life, but they're there and we do them and we realize that we're doing, or we maybe not realize, that we've got these superfluous things that are running through our brain.
Yes, again, going back to the previous definition, what's superfluous and what's meaningful can be looked at in a different way by different people at different times. One of the things to really recognize is everything is constantly changing. Nothing actually lasts forever. So consequently, what we call superfluous is something that's really moving through our lives. It's part of the change, and our brain is telling us, let me try to stop life from changing, okay, which is an illusion. And that's where life doesn't cooperate, because everything does change, and that's part of the beauty of everything, is that it does change. And a lot of suffering comes from trying to control it, and we get engrossed in control. We get engrossed in all kinds of things. But that doesn't mean that things are not good, or that small little things are not important. Almost, if you live life where everything is important, superfluous and big and small, you're really living a very rich level of consciousness, in my view.
Awesome.
Yes, and I also think that brings up the idea of detachment and how that is so helpful in allowing the present moment to come and go, if we can detach from outcome. And I find that I can do that quite easily and enjoy the present moment. So detachment is, I think, a wonderful way of connection.
Detaching from the negative,
just in general,
detaching to the positive.
Or
Because
just
positive always makes you happier, obviously.
Or just detaching, period. So whatever's going to come is going to come.
Whichever.
So, yeah.
Interesting.
So I'm really curious about something, Harvey, and to get your feedback and the rest of the cast feedback on. You know, I always say, and I've been in computer technology ever since it came out, and you know, I kind of have experienced computers as a way we created them in our own image, and it's very simply, you know, it has eyes, it has the camera is the eyes, the speakers are the ears, the microphone is the mouth, and there is a memory, and there is processor, the heart. Everything is pretty much duplicated in the machine called the computer. And then there's the software. And what I'm curious about the software, I'm curious if we can agree that the computers are very similar to human beings. How many software upgrades would you say humanity have gone through in its evolution? Are there major pinnacle points?
Wow, that's a great topic. I think every time people talk about psychology, what are they really talking about? They're talking about the software of our mind, trying to figure out the software with the mind that software is operating. And so what we get is we get theories of models and systems. The mechanical model is neuroscience or neurobiology. It's trying to understand the plumbing and map the brain and map signals in such a way that helps us understand how we work in a certain way. But in reality, it falls far short because in actuality, the mind is much, much larger in terms of its essence and nature and scope than the brain. And most people think that the brain contains the mind, but the brain is simply an operating system for the mind. It's more like the mind created the brain than the other way around.
Yeah. I'm now going to look at a computer in a completely different way, Steve. I've never heard a computer explained that way, but I actually love the way you do that because a lot of us are now talking to our computer. We don't actually talk, but we punch in the keys and things. But what I love about the computer is when you're thinking about something or you want to learn about something or do something, all you have to do is press all these keys, and up comes all these different ways of what you want to find out, whether it's for the mind or the brain or whatever it is for, but it's there for you to put into your body and actually expand your brain and your mind in a way that we never had before. So I think it's just amazing how we can become to know ourselves maybe even more.
And here we're doing it right this minute. I mean,
there you go. Yeah. It's amazing how it works.
We're connecting. I mean, we're connecting all of you, and we're connecting ourselves to the community, locally, nationally, worldwide. And what's interesting is that I'm just having this intuition that at some point here, not the too distant future, computers and us are going to become one again, which is kind of crazy.
Well, what do you mean one again? Lost you.
Well, because this thing called the keyboard, at some point it's going to go away, so that there isn't going to be any outside peripheral things to computers. They basically going to be pretty much going to be the same thing. It's going to be inside of us.
Yeah, and funny you should say that because when you have your cell phone and you're writing a text, you can actually start writing this text. It actually brings up the word you want to use without you even putting anything in it yet. But it's assuming this is the next word you're going to have, and that to me is fascinating because I think, oh, that's the word I want. But it's already calculated it, and that to me is amazing because that's just the beginning of technology that actually what you're saying, Steve, is going to happen. And you're just, are we going to be wandering around walking silently, or is it going to be connected to our brain? How's that going to work, Harvey?
How is it going to work? Well, I've seen lots of science fiction films and read science fiction books. There are so many people who look at technology as a threat. I tend to look at it as an opportunity for the next level of human evolution.
Yeah, I do too.
Because I believe that we haven't really tapped the full potential yet in terms of what the capacity is. I mean, after all, did we or did we not invent the computers? And are they not no more than a mechanical extension of us? And what did they do? They make our lives be able to interact more with one another, get to understand each other more. When you look at past history and you see the kind of tribalism, even look at Buddhism in Asia. There's so many different kinds of Buddhism in Asia because every time Buddhism got to a particular spot, it was a different country and a different circumstances, and the religion had to adapt to a new kind of population, in which so that at the end, the diaspora of Buddhism is really made up of a host of teachings, all of which help the totality of Buddhism survive, because nature works like that. Nature likes diversity. It makes everything last longer. And the kind of contributions that we get from technology today makes it possible.
Yeah, what is the difference you've seen in Buddhism since people have been able to get it on the computer? Because I think a lot of us on the show right now did not have computers when we were kids. They weren't around. And I know I can talk for myself that no, I didn't have a computer till later. So, and I would imagine also for you, Harvey, that now you've seen the transition from not having computers and going into Buddhism and finding out more about Buddhism, technically and also mentally. What difference have you seen?
Well, I think first of all, the ability to communicate. I myself, I've spent 15 years of research before I wrote my book, The Buddha from Babylon. And a great deal of that research has taken place in a place where I don't live. I live in California, but the entire book takes place in Asia, and primarily the Buddha from Babylon takes place from the Indus Valley to the Mediterranean 2,500 years ago. And without having colleagues and experts in that part of the world and people willing to share information on the internet, there was no way that I would be able to put together the story and scenario and depth that is possible in that book. So in essence, I am a product of the computer age in terms of its range of research. And I can then share it with people throughout the world, people who are interested now in this subject. So we basically now can advance. Even Buddhism now, as it comes into the West, has to once again adapt to a new world, a modern world, a world with technology, and while its traditional roots are wonderful, and its language and its thoughts and its mythologies and its essence of self-transformation, what a fantastic message, and what a message we truly need in our modern times. That really now can reach many, many people because of the internet and film and radio and everything else that's possible today.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I think one of the things that I've noticed, Harvey, is when you travel the world, how similar, how different we may seem to be and how similar we really are. It blew me away recently being in a really poor country, and I was coaching clients, and then coming back to a not so poor country and working in the country of that country and going, wow, didn't I just experience this? Not in this country though. It was like so similar, and yet everyone thinks that their problems and are bigger than somebody else's because they've put a different perception on them. But what really came to light for me was the similarity that we're all going through. It doesn't matter where we are, and it can be good, bad, or ugly.
Yes, news alert, we're all human.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Well, by the way, have you... Go ahead.
I was just going to talk about, Harvey, the link that you've got there between the neuroscience and the Freudian. Can you give us some sort of insight into that?
Sure. I think I basically covered the neuroscience in terms of its being a mechanical study of the nervous system and the brain.
Yeah.
Freud was the one who brought forth a model of the way the human mind works, particularly the individual mind. And I'll explain what I mean by that in a moment. The individual mind is a mind full of impulses, full of desires, and consequently a lot of the engrossments and whether and attachments, to give the other side of the detachment. These are all things that people deal with. The Buddha also identified the individual mind as a particular place where there are issues like that. And in fact, the Four Noble Truths of Buddhism basically say, in my own words, that whether you experience something unhappy, you suffer. And if you experience happiness, then you try to hold on to that happy thing. But in due course, you become dependent on it, or you lose it and you miss it, and so you become unhappy. So either way, you're going to be unhappy. So the solution he was offering starts with something that people really, really need to take heed, and that is the third of the Noble Truth, and that is to make a vow to transform, a vow to evolve. That's a commitment to actually do something about your suffering rather than continue to spiral and be engrossed in it. And then the fourth of the Noble Truths are basically the action plan. What are you going to do about it? And those are various ways, and why Buddhism is really an application psychology. It isn't about saying things that are nice or having a good understanding of Buddhism. It's about self-transforming, and it's recognized that it's not an easy thing to do, but it also recognizes that the reward at the end of the day is that you're going to live a balanced, harmonious, aware life. Psychology now, back to that, has the goal, according to Freud, of something called the nirvana. Freud said the nirvana principle, which shows that he definitely studied Eastern thought just by having that name. And his nirvana principle says that we are constantly moving towards greater and greater stress, and then seek relief from that stress. And that relief eventually comes, and he called it death. So in other words, life is stress, and when you stop experiencing, you're dead.
Wow, this is a lovely positive show on consciousness.
Yes. Well, this is...
I'm going to get all my positive stuff back again. Steve?
Well, the solution to that, of course, is to welcome stress.
Yeah.
Yes,
stress could be a good thing.
If you understand it, yes. If you can go back and understand
it gets us off our butt and gets us moving and pull the trigger on things that we like to do or we would like to do.
Well, but I think that if we understand that it's all self-imposed, then it doesn't have to be stressful at all. So I think that's part of the conscious evolving and taking responsibility. So then we could do whatever we're going to do, and it doesn't have to be stressful.
That's like destiny. We bring our own destiny in. We bring our own, or we bring our own stuff into ourselves, so we don't have to have that.
So let me. I just wanna get everybody's temperature on this one. So I'm just trying to on the show trying to do something that may show our viewers is this stressful. So we in the 21st century, right? And not long ago, just a few days ago, somewhere in a remote country, a human being was put into a cage and then lit on fire. So does that create stress for anyone here on the show?
I don't think it created stress. I think for me, it created of how could any human being actually do that with a conscious mind? Since I have a conscious mind, that's why I'm on the show. And I just was trying to think of, as not of a negative side, but as how could somebody in their right mind actually do that? That was my question to me. And I still don't have the answer, because I just don't know how anybody could possibly do such a thing and stand there and watch it. It boggles my mind. I don't know if that answers your question, Steve, but I still don't have an answer.
Well, I'm curious to get some more feedback from others, including Harvey.
Oh, go ahead, Harvey.
Oh, well, you happen to just hit on the right spot in the world that I've been studying for all these years. And many people understand that there is a religious component to this kind of horror. And it's like as if somebody gave us a window into hell. But hell is not something that happens in some other dimension. The reality is that hell happens in our own dimension. There are various kinds of hells, of which the burning hells, in terms of Vedic teachings, is one of them. And we also have different kinds of hells that we experience individually. People who are in depression have an imploded hell. Now that said, that part of the world where this is taking place has been under a continuous cycle of brutality and domination for some 4,000 years. Before the Buddha was born, around the 6th century BC, and there were the Babylonian Empire that ravaged the world in that area. There was the Assyrian Empire that ravaged the world in that area. And their brutality, they're the ones that invented, when we hear the story about the disappearance of the Israelites, they went in and basically took an entire nation prisoners and shipped them off into exile in other places to do their bidding as slaves. This kind of brutality in that part of the world that had been so incubated that by the time Islam came around, it was very much established. Now, the Buddha himself is known to have been a pacifist, and this is a very important point of Buddhism, is that he came into the world at the time when the Persian Empire rose to power. And the Persian Empire was brutal, dominant, and had a religious point of view as well. And that religious point of view was that there were two gods. One was their God, who was good, and the other was everybody else's God, who was evil, the great deceiver. That point of view precedes Islam by 1,000 years in that part of the world. What we're looking at today is we're looking back in time and seeing what happens when there is a complete breakdown of humanity, and what is left is a level of violence and anger that is basically inhuman.
I would like to interject something. That's all very interesting and true, and that's lovely, and thank you so much. However, I think it's very important that people understand they have a choice to put their attention on that particular thing that occurred. And I think the ability to choose where we put our attention is an important part of consciousness, and it's an important part of choosing our own suffering and taking personal responsibility and self-imposed stress. So when we talk about individual choice and we talk about giving examples to our audience about stress and what we can do to manage our own stress, I think that once again, where we're choosing to put our attention, and if we're choosing to watch television and CNN and all of those things that we have access to now with the internet 24 hours a day, that is a choice. And I think that having access that we do now does create stress on some level because people are always trying to keep up with everything that's going on in the world. And a lot of what's going on in the world is horrific. So, yes, it's stressful.
Okay. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah. So thank
true.
you.
If I just may, I just want to respond to that because I think she made an important point. Uh, there, but here's the reality check. Not the whole world's not going to turn off their TV sets. The takeaway with that we have to really have out of this is that this is another signal and opportunity that pacifism itself is a powerful force that requires us to self-transform and advance forward as human beings so that we can eradicate that level of existence from our planet and create a harmonious planet. And that is not going to happen unless pacifism is engaging and conscious.
Yes, and guess what? So the way I reconcile this with myself, and it's only just with myself. So I've been doing this work with this network for over 10 years, and I'm not sure that I'm making a huge dent in terms of the consciousness of the Earth. I make maybe a little difference, but not a whole lot. But when something like this happens, the media, of course, immediately jumps on it, and it's everywhere. It's in all the papers. It's on all the TV channels. And the way I reconcile it is fantastic. They're doing commercials for us because we have to wake up, and we have to. Well, we don't have to, but we can choose to. But when this kind of stuff is in our face, it's going to transform people, I believe, because they're going to say, this is not acceptable. We're in the 21st century. So I kind of see it in a way. I see the positive side of it that says, oh, they're running another commercial for potential evolution and consciousness.
But you know what the problem is? A lot of people don't know how to digest this information. Something has to happen between taking the information in and transformation. And I think that is very difficult for people to be bombarded with the kind of imagery that we're bombarded with often, and what's going on in the world, and then what happens in terms of transformation. And I'm not exactly sure how people get from observation to transformation. And Harvey, maybe you can speak to that and give someone a few suggestions to how to bridge that, because I think that's difficult for people.
It is. I totally agree with you, and I truly love the peaceful mind and the protection of the peaceful mind. And I think that is definitely a way in which practice your own consciousness and protect your own consciousness. When we talk about this collective issue, I'm going to bring up the second kind of psychology that comes from Carl Jung, which is the collective
consciousness. Yeah.
Mm.
And that is a whole other mind that we have other than the individual mind that we spoke about earlier. The Buddha also called it a shared mind. And we kind of have shared circles. Your family is a circle, your nation is a circle, your workplace. You have affinities and alliances with people in different kind of categories. They love sport, you love the sport. All of these things that bring us together into various collectives. And we have political collectives and we have religious collectives and so on. And in a way, our mind doesn't function the same way when it comes to this collective information, because the collective mind always differentiates between us and them. And this is just part of the way our mind works. Our individual mind differentiates between me and other. And then there is a third mind, according to the Buddha, which is the universal mind, in which there is no differentiation. It is a boundless mind that we all possess, It's a cosmic mind that we all have, and it really holds our true self within it. And it is that mind, when that mind is really running the show, everything else falls into balance. Everything else harmonizes. It's just that when we have too much of the collective mind operating, then we really lose our identity and we lose our bigger self. And when we have the collective mind operate, the individual mind, we can operating at too high a level, then we have a lot of selfishness and self-referential kind of behavior. Psychology recognizes that.
Yes, so are you saying that if you look at the collective mind, that we can actually be connected to the people that did the burning, and we can also be connected to the person that was burnt? So we can feel, depending on our perception of what happened in that particular case that Steve brought up, we can have totally different emotions around that event. Like I know, for example, there's some young people here in Australia that flew out on flights and went over to help the Islamic group, and told their mum basically they were going down the street, and the next thing they're on TV with a gun in their hand. So there's some people that it excited them to the point where they want to be a part of that killing machine, and there are some people that are appalled by it and want to, transform somebody else or make somebody else feel happy to balance it out. I think there's going to be so many different perceptions of how each and every one of us takes that on board. I really liked what Jamie said earlier, though, about disconnecting and disassociating ourselves and choosing what we connect with and what we choose to then believe and work forward with in our own life.
I think it's so very sad that something like this has to happen for all of us to wake up and take on our own persona of how we feel about it. But there's one good thing about that, I guess, comes out of everything, which is where my positivity comes into it, is now Jordan has woken up, and now they're going to all retaliate back. So it's woken up awful lot of people all over the world because there's such a terrible, terrible tragedy. Never mind for the person that it happened to, which can you just imagine in your mind that this man is in this cage and he's still alive and he's being burnt while he's still knowing what's going on. I mean, if you can feel that, that's absolutely an incredible tragedy. But at the same time, it's woken up the whole world, because this is back to you, Steve, about talking about the news media and putting this out on the news, that has opened up this whole world of, okay, now we've got to do something. But did it have to take that for us to be conscious of what's going on in this world?
Well, obviously it did. Obviously it did.
Isn't that sad when you think about it? Why couldn't, as human beings of being conscious and who we all are, and obviously trying to do good for each other, hopefully, and this had to happen to make us like shift ourselves and move around and say, wow, this really is happening.
And we've been talking about, and we've been talking about evolution, and we've been talking about transformation. I mean, Harvey mentioned that word numerous times since we started the show. But I do believe that before transformation occurs, there has to be some kind of a breakdown. In order to get a breakthrough, there has to be a breakdown. So I've been kind of viewing breakdowns as good news. And the bigger it is, the better the news, because the bigger the breakthrough.
The more conscious we become.
What do we think about that, Harvey?
Well, the Buddha said there's two ways to enlightenment. One is wisdom, the other one is desperation.
Both the ends of the totem pole. The left and right brain.
So you could either be proactive about it and say, I really want to grow my awareness and become more conscious human being. Doesn't matter what's going on in your life, one way or the other. Everybody, as I said earlier, is going to find some way to suffer. And we're very talented at that kind of information. The information of suffering, we constantly are looking for it without even necessarily understanding what it's about.
Well, but Jamie never suffers.
No, I don't think so.
Does this mean that Jamie is enlightened? Does this mean that Jamie is enlightened? Has Jamie experienced enlightenment?
Yes, I am wired for pleasure. That's exactly what it is. It's true.
I'm with Jamie 100%.
Yes, no, it's very true. Yeah. So I don't look for anything about suffering. Absolutely not. And it's a conscious process. But I think it's a choice every single day, every single moment. So in terms of what you're choosing to engage in, where you're choosing to put your attention.
Well, Jamie, you're an example of somebody who's addressed the issue. I'm referring to the general population.
But I think it's important for people to know they have a choice, because I don't think there's enough of that out there. I think that we hear all the time how resolved we are to people choosing to be wired to pain, or to look for the drama, or to focus on the negative, or to argue for our limitations. And I think people need to understand that that is a personal choice, a very powerful personal choice that anyone can engage in at any moment.
Yeah, but wait a minute. Let's just separate the people that on this planet that are aware and the people that are not aware. And I believe whoever has done that deed that we just been talking about for the last 10 minutes cannot possibly be aware, because I feel that my own experience of consciousness began with being aware. And
yes,
once I'm on this...
Okay, but sometimes people just need permission to see something differently in a different way. And I think that it's important to give people permission and to show them through, certainly, your living example of what you're doing, how it is possible. Because we're not seeing very many examples of giving permission on television or in the media. I think for most people, they are absolutely paralyzed and filled with fear and anxiety, and every time they turn on the television, I don't think that they feel they have a choice.
And getting back to the internet again, and getting back to what Steve does, which is the programming he does and what he's created, which is amazing, I think that a lot of people have realized that because of the internet, they can actually get themselves out there. They can be in their room all by themselves. They can make their own television thing. They can do their own stuff. And this is a way of them escaping and saying, wow, I really can do that, whereas they never had that opportunity before. So getting back to the internet, like you, Harvey, if you said that you could never have written your book if you hadn't had the internet, which I'm quite sure you probably could have still written it. You just have to do a lot of traveling. But you're there all the time.
But wait, Nina, yeah, I agree with you. But here's the thing. Yes, there is what we've been doing, like what Harvey has done, what I'm doing, what you ladies are doing with us on the network. We're using this technology for good things, but you can also use it for bad stuff. And so the internet also made it possible that now you can get anything on the internet, not just the good stuff.
But they can still, therefore, they can be exactly whom they want to be, because they're still hidden behind the screen. Because whether it's good or bad, nobody really knows, because I'm quite sure a lot of them don't put their names on bad things they do. There's some people do. But so they're kind of this hidden thing, you know, they can do whatever they want, good or bad, right or wrong.
But I'm checking out the YouTube constantly, and there are hundreds and hundreds of millions of videos in YouTube. And I can say from my own experience, most of it is junk. I'm not interested in it. Most of it is junk, but that's just me.
I agree with, no, that's not, you got two of them, because I agree with you. A lot of it is junk.
You know, the other thing is, though, anything that you look for, you will find. I mean, anything. Any single thing you look for, you will find.
I agree with that 100%. I agree with
that. So it's about the choosing.
And we could do it before. I mean, before the internet was around and before the computers were around, we were still finding everything that we wanted, right?
Yes.
It just took longer.
Probably.
Now it's much quicker.
It's just progression of life, and life is going to continue like that, exactly as Harvey was saying. We're going to end up with not doing the computer with your fingers. You're going to do it another way, and this is all coming out, and we're just, fortunately, I'm still around to experience some of it. But it's amazing to me that you can actually, in this world, I believe, you can be anything you want. It's what you choose. And Jamie said it very well. You can choose what you want, anyhow, any place.
So I think
I've
we
got
have
a little
arrived at a good
story
place.
for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
What's the story?
Go ahead.
The
We like
story
stories.
is about the story is about the Buddha, and that at a certain point he became the Buddha after spending a certain amount of time in the part of the world that was invaded by the Persian Empire, and he had became quite an immense leader. That it was bringing a new kind of thinking to the world that the people in authority at that time found dangerous. And so there was a coup and a purge, and he had to go into the forest, and there he joined up with old friends where he had been before, and those were called the Shramana, and they were men who sat all day long practicing ways in which they can detach themselves. The purpose of detachment at that time, in those ancient days, was in order to no longer have a connection of your soul to what they perceived as, in the same sense as a sinful action in the world. And consequently, their goal was to release their soul from being ever born again, because they saw that the world itself was a filthy, dirty place to the Buddha himself, while he joined this kind of meditation group, began to take things to a whole other level, where his purpose was to be able to find a way not to necessarily leave the world forever, but to transform the world through self-transformation. There, I've said it again. The point being that every single human being has the choice, as was said, to be able to decide what to do with their life, and the ability to give themselves permission to change and to make those decisions. And individuals do have that power, and I totally agree with you. I think that some people, of course, have a very difficult time accepting just that. That they do have a choice, that they do have the power.
Well, most people are not interested in personal responsibility, and that's really what we're talking about. So, you know.
Yeah, so the question from the standpoint of a compassionate practitioner is, how do we help people awaken to that power, that they have the ability to choose, that they have the ability to transform and have the power to do so. And I think one of the things that's important in order to do that is to inspire people to explore, to have courage, to practice compassionate action in their life, to have a life that is basically constructive. It's not brain science. You know, if you have a very constructive point of view and an engaged point of view, and you want to be able to help other people and not be, stuck within yourself, then you're going to have a beautiful life. I mean,
the interesting thing, though, about having compassion for others is that most people don't have compassion for themselves. You must have compassion for yourself first before you could have compassion for others. And that's where it has to begin. And people skip over that. And they try to tap into having compassion for others. It just doesn't work that way. First, we must start with ourselves. Compassion for ourselves. And that leads to compassion of others.
And love for ourselves.
Of course, self-love.
Well, I think that one of the larger problems is the financial side of life. We get caught up with this money thing, and life kind of runs away with us because we've got to pay the bills, and we've got the family and the kids, and they get involved in so many other things that they've taken responsibility of their choice, that now their choice is they've got to take care of what they've got to take care of, and they don't have time for themselves. And that's the sad part of, especially in America, that people are very, very, I'm not saying ruled by money, but I've never seen such a country to work so hard as people do in America. They work very 1 and 2 jobs. They work very, very hard to keep up the family life they have chosen.
Well, I just want to add to that is that what I've been, because I'm working in the financial industry right now, and I'm coming more and more present to that money is fine. When we get into trouble is when we have an affinity or a love for money. As soon as that arises, we're in trouble.
You know, money is just an energy. That's all it is. It's not even a commodity. It's just an energy.
Yeah, but then you've got these
That's
families
it.
that have to feel that they've got these families that they've got this responsibility that they've laid on themselves, obviously, because it takes 2 people to have children, and then you've got to bring them up, and you've got to feed them, and you've got to have a house, and you've got to have all this stuff, and it is stuff. And to get away from that is very, very difficult for a lot of people. What do you think, Harvey?
Well, you know, I think it's a very difficult issue because our mind wants to make judgments on what's good and what's bad, both for ourselves and for others. And we get into trouble when we do that, because what we really should be doing is just inspiring and have confidence that when you inspire people to really take care of themselves and take care of others, and I don't differentiate about what comes first, the chicken or the egg in that regard. I think that anywhere you want to start, you want to care with yourself first or you want to care about others first, that's a good place to start. You care. That's what's important. It's triggering the mechanism itself, you know, and not creating some kind of a how-to situation, which in many cases, that's what we've got today in terms of religion. It's become, I've got the best practice.
This is the right way. This is the right way to do it.
Yeah.
My way is the right way.
Yeah. But you know, you talk about triggering caring. I mean, that's just innate. We all have that. We just need to redirect ourselves back to it. I mean, that's just the most natural thing in the world, is to love and to care for ourselves and for one another, and that's it.
But some people have lost touch with that element of themselves, and that's part of
But that can be changed. You know, we can change that in an instant like everything else. I've just had a coaching client that was running this $15 million company, and he was out of whack with his kids and his wife and you name it, lived in the richest part of Sydney. His kids went to the richest school, and just through a little bit of coaching and for him to start looking at life from a different angle and perspective, all of a sudden he just left the lot. He stayed with his family, took them out of the richest school, stayed with his wife. They upped their house and everything and moved to the country. At the end of the day, he just wanted a small farm in the outskirts of, well, further down from Sydney, but in the outskirts of New South Wales. And he's happy as a pig in mud. It was just, you know, in his mind, as you say, living in and like Ninon was saying, getting caught up with the Joneses. You know, the funny part about it for the people out there, you say, what will the neighbours think? Maybe the neighbours don't think. So why compare? Why judge? Why compare? Whatever makes you happy has got to be to the point where that's the life we lead. If you can get up every day and say, do I really want to do that? And if you do and you love it, go for it. And if you don't, then why are we going for it? That's stressful.
Well, the transformation, we've been talking about that all the way throughout the show. But that, in my experience, that happens in the moment. It happens in that place that Harvey has talked about at the beginning of the show, which is right in between the past and the future, and it's in that moment. That's where transformation occurs. And it can happen any moment, right, Harvey?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely, any moment.
Any moment.
And that that is such an empowering thought that at any point you can go from being a person who is drowning to being a person who can save others. I mean, we just heard the story where this individual was talking to the right person.
Mm.
Many individuals are not talking to the right person. For everyone like that, there are many others who are continuing to be part of that kind of thing. Again, there's no judgment about that. If somebody loves money and they are in that state of mind where they're trying to hold on to something that really will disappear anyway, because they're here for a certain period of time, or they want to have money for the sake of power, or they want to have money to take care of their friends or their family or whatever it may be. There's a certain amount of money that all of us right here require. And then there are people who have an additional hunger for something that is beyond what they require. And I think that that's where some people look at that and they go, you really need that much money? You should give it away to somebody else who needs it more. Okay, and that's when the politicians walk in.
So let me ask a really, I just have this really probing question. So let's pretend that tonight I'm going to win the lottery and it's $240 million. Do you think that money would change me? And if the answer is yes, how would it change me?
Yes.
No, I don't think it would change you. I really don't. I think we are who we are, and I don't think it would change you. The essence of who you are.
I think it would change his thoughts of what he wants and what he can do now. I think it would change that, change your thoughts of what you've always wanted, and you go out and you can get it. But as I agree with Jamie, as a human being, I think you are what you are. It's just that you'll be able to have all the things you've been working for.
Well, you'll have more resources, and what you choose to do with those resources will be a reflection of who you are. But is that going to change who you are? I don't think so. Hopefully that will be an extension of who you are, and it'll be interesting to see what you do with all that money.
So, Steve, why don't you win the lottery for us to find out what's going to happen?
and actually, in Chicago, our lottery tonight is the drawing is tomorrow. I think it's up to $480 million.
Well, I think you should buy Steve a ticket.
I'm happy to buy all of you a ticket.
That would be great. All right. So, but
then we can buy the cornmeal for my African village that I've just sponsored. Thank you very much.
It's interesting because a lot of people believe that money corrupts people, and
well, it does corrupt some people.
And money changes people. Like
and it can, and it may not.
Money also corrupts large-scale organizations and all kinds of things that can be corrupted by money. But at the same time, I think if you look at it over a long period of time, in just the last 100 years or so, the fact that there's been so much more money being made has been used to create a tremendous progress in society as a whole without looking at it in small ways.
Yeah. Sure.
Well, I would definitely. I mean, I can tell you that. So, by the way, I'm signing up for this study to win the lotto, and the very first thing I would probably do is I would give PBS $1 million to get our network on all 350 channels.
Well, thank you,
Steve. Thank you. Yeah,
that's probably the first thing I would do.
That's a great thought.
That's wonderful.
And the next thing I would do is I would, of course, take care of my family, my kids, and all that. And then the next thing I would do is I would get with you all and figure out what's the best way that we can put a lot of this money to, so that it would make a huge difference in terms of helping people to become aware and conscious, and what we could do to help the evolution of humanity.
Your heart is in the right place, Steve. I think that's beautifully said. Yeah.
I think that's a true reflection of who you are. That's wonderful. Yeah.
So you wouldn't change, Steve. You would be the same.
15 years ago, the answer would have been, is the very first thing I would do is I would buy the most expensive BMW there is.
I was going to say, you could get an apartment, you could live in
very nice too.
In fact, I would have one made just for me.
And that's very
that nobody else could
well,
have.
you can still do that, Steve. You can do the lot.
Yeah, I know, but it's really not that important.
So, Harvey, back to what we were originally talking about, how can we enhance people on Buddhism, or how can we help them just to read about it, or just to understand it a little bit more than they do? How do we do that? Because it is quite important.
Well, I'm not a promoter of Buddhism as a religion.
No.
But what I do is really help people understand the wisdom of Buddhism that is applicable to all human beings. Buddhism was created for that purpose. The Buddha himself was about ultimate humanity and how we can fulfill our full potential and evolve each and every one of us into Buddhas on a cosmic scale. This story is tremendous and is part of the Buddhist literature. So my book, The Buddha from Babylon, actually explores the very roots of all beliefs and how all of that built up and how the world and its politics and its brutality and all of that came together, and out of that swamp a lotus flower emerged, and that's what Buddhism is. Buddhism is this incredibly clear and pure human way and path in which we can get the most out of being a human being. And that's a great journey that we are all on.
That's beautiful. Thank you. That's beautifully said, because you don't have to take up the religion just to see where it comes from, because you said that originally he went into this because of what was happening in Palestine and everything else, and he wanted to have just a tranquil life and live, and it became Buddhism.
Yes, it was a way to bring wisdom and awareness to human beings about who we are, how we work, so that we can learn how to run this thing that we call us.
Well, guess what, folks? We managed to spend an entire conscious hour in between the past and in the future in that thing. we just did a conscious hour, which was fantastic. Thank you very much to our guest Harvey Kraft. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Harvey.
Being on our network.
Yeah, thank you.
And we all, of course, welcome you in the future to come back to Living Consciously TV and have more of these engaging conversations. And if we have touched, moved, and inspired anybody out there by anything that any of us said here tonight, please continue to come back to consciousevolutionmedia.com, come to our YouTube channel, and also watch us on PBS and watch us on cable television. We're trying to get all over the place because it all started just as a lotus flower, didn't it, 10 years ago? Out of my own misery, I just created this little flower, and look at where we are 10 years later. So thank you, everybody, and I love you all, and we'll see you, of course, always on Tuesday evenings on this Conscious Hour of Living Consciously TV. Thank you all, and have a great evening, and
thank you.
See you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.